Hi, this is Sheila with Conscious Conversation Central, and today is Friday, February the 8th, 2019, and my gal pals are back, BZ Rieger and Lisa Flamina Rush, and tonight we've got a topic, what to expect when you experience without labels, scripts, or judgments. Well, it's really labels slash scripts slash judgments. I don't think there's any one of us really that have really experienced much of that, have we? Lisa, you are muted, so you might be saying stuff, but we can't hear you.
But no judgment.
No judgment.
That happened to me.
I was wondering why your mic was muted. I thought maybe, well, is Albert?
I did not do that.
Oh.
Yeah.
So what were you trying to say?
So what did I say?
You were muted.
I forgot. I'm really sorry.
Well, Sheila said deadpan. None of us have really experienced that. And you then said something.
And I said, can we really experience that, BZ? Is that even possible?
That's a good question.
Well,
I mean,
sometimes doesn't it feel like it's not?
It kind of sort of does. I mean,
Kind of.
it sort of, yeah, it does. I mean, that's a really good question. Well, because I don't think I have ever experienced that.
Okay, now I'm confused.
Okay, wait a minute. What do you mean you're confused?
Well, what to expect when you experience without labels, scripts, judgments.
Yeah.
And so you said I get it. Okay, so you're saying, has anybody...
I'm sorry, I'm trying to think of
You can tell that I've been out there flying.
No. It's a very snowy day.
The actual crystalline snowflakes. I've been a snow crystal. So I get it. Okay. I was confused by your statement, thinking,
Oh.
So you've never experienced that. You don't think you can experience that. Is that what you're saying?
No, I did not say that. Well, I think maybe my statement was in terms of, well, I mean, we kind of label and judge everything, don't we? I mean, we go, there's discernment, there's judging, there's,
That's the whole point.
I know. That's why I said I don't think I've ever experienced
it. Can you?
I don't know. I would like to find out.
Well, everybody has experienced it. It could be in tiny ways, could be in bigger ways, could be in because when your heart is fully open, you experience that. When you encounter magical, fantastical things for that energetic envelope, you have experienced that. Because that's when those things can flow in. When you are fully involved in a participation in a dream, or working at night when you think you're just sleeping, or deep meditation, or a vision, or that feeling of flow, absolute flow, where time either doesn't exist or seems to stop, right? You have experienced it. It could be only for a nanosecond, and you may not realize that's what you've done, but the very act or with your, when you're playing with your squeaky toy, you know, this is how it goes. The very act, which is the very frequency of playing in that, lets you be outside of that flow, that sync of the judgment and labeling and all that kind of stuff.
So perhaps I may set up for me, if you could describe for me an instance where one might experience without labels, judgments, and
if you're looking at something, okay, we had a very snowy day here, and so there's that hush that comes through. So if you were walking down the little bit of road and you just stop and you're completely just tuned in and noticing. Not that you're thinking, oh, it's snow, or there's a tree and there's snow on the tree, but just noticing the hush. And beyond that, there's a kind of a whisper as the trees move just a little bit, even though there's no wind with the snow on it. There's a muffling of all of the man-made noises that kind of battens all that. There's a lot of kind of chronic low-grade human noise, and the snow baffles all of that. You know, you can then notice the birds. So in that moment, you're tuning in to notice. So noticing, you know, here's a toolbox, noticing, simply noticing as a tool, as a thing to be and do, as something to practice and build your muscle at, lets you step in. It may only be for, you know, smidgens of time, but it lets you be in that space where there is, you know, there's no judgment, there's no labeling.
Okay, I grasp what you're saying now. It took me a minute. That's you know, partly because of the language, I think, and also the situation. I needed you to set up what you're speaking on.
And as you practice, you know, you build your muscle with that tool, then you can oftentimes just to simply notice, you know, now you can go where you're noticing and then you're observing. And when you're observing, the judgment and label, and, you know, judgment doesn't always have to be, it's not that I'm talking about negative or positive. It's just that now you're ascribing something to it. You're characterizing something to it, right?
That's kind of what I meant before when I was saying, I don't know that we as humans have really ever experienced that, but I now get what you mean, because the very moment, I mean, to go back to your scenario, like you said, the noticing is one thing, but the moment observation is made, it's cold. That is then a discernment / judgment / label.
Right.
And so I feel I'm grokking exactly what you meant by that.
Yeah. And so what I wanted was nudged to bring for us to play with is so if we kind of put it in, again, in like a tool thing, in that energetic envelope of the noticing, right, where there is the absence of the labeling judgment, it's because it's noticing. It's completely one with whatever it is that you would be directing to be noticing. It could be noticing everything around you. It could be looking, if you're looking really closely at something. So for example, so building the muscles of doing that noticing, which is building the muscle and the not picking up the observational, you know, you got your Clouseau hat on and your magnifying glass and, right, you know, or your dictionary and you're flipping through, you know, what word can you write, you know, or right. So you're before all of that, or you've let that go, however you want to hold it. And you're building those muscles. And as you build those muscles, then you can hold that space, hold and create that energetic envelope that is, this is not quite the right way to say it, that's larger, that has a bigger capacity, that can envelop everything around you in the moment. And then you can walk, with your envelope, can then enfold other things in it. And because when you're in that space, so that's what what happens, what to expect when you're in that space and you have your muscles that are, built up and well lubed, and you can hold it for more and more expansive moments, we'll say. Then what steps into what you encounter, what you behold in those energetic envelopes, is magical and fantastical and superpower, if you were to label it, things
and
that come
far better than anything you would be attached to in the first place.
That's right.
So you can release that. It's all good.
Right.
I love this conversation, BZ. This is really, really, thank you. I'm sorry, so many things right now are flying through me as you've said that I have lost the thread of all of them. So I'm sorry for interrupting, but I got really excited.
No, well, see if one will float by and wants to come play.
Okay, well, the first thing was, you reminded me of something that I've been working on personally myself. With the, and I like that bubble analogy you just went with there, but creating that space of the non-judgment. So for me, I'm going to say it had to do with the telepathy piece, because I really want to communicate. But what I was doing was sticking everything in a box, like taking in all the data and quickly sorting it out into these little boxes that I could stack up. And that was limiting the data. It wasn't expanding my awareness or understanding, it was limiting. So what I'm trying to do then is not stick it in a box of language right away, but to sort of allow it to inform me. And what I've noticed is, so I expect it to come in a certain way, right? And I'll shuffle it into a box, right? It sits over here. Well, when I caught that I was doing that and I stopped, I made this observation that by doing that, what I was doing was funneling things into a certain, I'm going to use that into the box, right? To that label, to however, to the limit that I set upon it. Okay, when I don't do that, the things that arrive, I could not have even imagined or thought of. I would not have had a box appropriate to funnel it into.
Right.
And so by boxing it, I actually was limiting it. And I was thinking of the way that you worded that, what to expect when you, and I was thinking of that book when you are, what to expect when you are expecting. And I thought of what to expect when you aren't expecting. Because those boxes to me are sort of my expectations or things that I'm attached to. So anyway, that was beautiful.
Well, and so is the way you just put that too. So don't sell yourself short on that either. And for me, what I see about this conversation is actually in this moment of now exactly how huge this is, because in order to build something new that we've never done before,
hint,
because we've tried all the other crap and it's not worked out so good for all of us, only a few, we have to not be,
it's time for something totally different.
Yeah.
I
The
can't be
kinds of,
keeping the same boxes.
right. The kinds of things we don't have never created any boxes for.
Right.
And so,
And that's why
wow.
playing, helps you build those muscles. It's fun, it's fantastical, it comes out of the blue. It's, wow, I didn't see that, or I didn't expect that, or it just comes up and it's playing with you, and then you go, wow, look at that. Like Lisa said, I mean, that be my way to describe what Lisa was saying. She was looking for it to come in a certain way, so she might have hear it, or it would, kind of, she'd see it floating in and it go in the box, and and the things when she wasn't doing that, or just was so focused on the boxes and something else showed up, and it was already in you, incorporating with you, flowing with you, communicating with you, sharing data with you, and you looked up out of your box for a minute and you went, wow, hey!
Now we're getting somewhere.
And
Imagine.
that is a really beautiful description of just how it oftentimes unfolds. And so you can then, without grabbing at it, then you can very gently play with it as if it's, one of those dandelion puff flowers, right? So you can very gently play with it to notice, okay, did that arrive when I was focused on this box over here? And so I put my linear judgment, lining up, scripting, right?
Yes.
Mind over there, which let the other part of my mind just bring it in. So because some people say, and a lot of them just did, well, how do you do that? And so it's going to be different for everybody. But one of the ways that is the same, similar for everybody, is that you will, as Lisa just described, and we can go into other examples as well, when it shows up, whatever that it is, if you don't grab, oh my God, how do I do that? How do I got to do that again, right? You don't do that. You just relax and kind of gently notice where you are, how you're feeling, what just came before, and so maybe you can't get all of that on the first, but it will keep happening. And here's the trick. It has been happening for a long time. You simply haven't noticed.
Right. Yeah. Keep noticing.
Right. Yeah. But if you, so that's the thing and so whatever that was, what came before, what were you feeling? What were you focusing on? What were you grabbing onto that let this other part of you soft? So each one of those specific things there'll be as many of those as there are beings. What's the same is building the muscle and getting in the flow of having awareness and noticing of that, whatever that was for you, and gently playing with kind of, you might write them down, you might have whatever that is a way to capture for you. So that would be the same. It's the stuff, that you're picking up and noticing that will be different.
Yes, and some of it quite fantastical and really cool.
Right.
When it presents, has been my experience recently.
Yeah, and so this is really kind of about how to. Well, it's a huge subject. So I think the best way to just play with it a little bit is what to expect, because then that gives one impetus, if they didn't already have it, to build your noticing, and your playing muscles, and go with it.
Well, the tendency to label everything that we see, hear, feel right away is something that, again, it is a program and conditioning that we all have, because, well, I mean, let's face it, that's how we all got to learn the language and read and things like that too. I mean, let's think right now. when look at your little toddler books. A is apple, and we're given a picture that's already labeled. So labeling comes quite naturally. And yeah, no, I know why that is. I know why that is. But I wanted to point it out specifically in that manner, because every single time I have heard at least one or two, and they may not be in the energetic envelopes that are right here, right now, or whatever. And I know it's not with the three of us, but I have heard folks say, well, I'm not programmed. Yeah, okay.
And what you're speaking of is a recipe, a very deliberate, very elaborate, very sophisticated, nuanced, extensive, self-replicating recipe to shut down with specificity and particularity exactly what I'm talking about.
No, exactly correct. And I realized, so even for myself, I think this was one of the reasons that I in particular found it so difficult to grok some of these things, is because of said programming that we all get. Mm-hmm. And so no one is left out in that. Not one being on this planet has been left out in that. And so I have come to feel that what I'm actually doing here is deprogramming myself. And it's kind of fun. All those movies where they show deprogramming that's so horrible. I think they did that on purpose too, because that's really what we're doing here, is deprogramming ourselves. And it doesn't have to be horrible. It can be fabulous, actually. But I think it's important to point that out, because it's so ingrained and so grooved in all of us that I couldn't even, when you first started talking about this, I was like, everybody's going to label everything. And that's why. But the very moment you started talking, I do feel, because I have talked about remaining open, and that's part of it.
Mm-hmm. Aww. Hi, Keegan. Nice to see you, friends.
I like this guy. He says, we're playing with the good stuff now.
Yeah, you look fabulous.
He said we can make dragons show up when we're talking about this kind of stuff.
Funny you should say
that. It's so I want to get to playing with some of this bigger stuff, but I did have someone just ask a question to give a couple examples of what we're talking about. So one that popped into mind was when my daughter was she was a wee one, maybe actually two. Okay, so one, she was like three and a half. And we were out on the screen-in porch at my mother-in-law's, and she was very intently focused on something. And I was sitting there, my mother-in-law was sitting there, and Charlotte was doing what she was doing. And all of a sudden, she got up and she ran to do something, and she smacked into something. And the mother-in-law went, oh, and just shoved this energy at her, and Charlotte's face crumpled and she started to cry. So, I settled her down, and then I said, excuse me, can you come out? I want to talk to you for a minute. To the mother-in-law, out of earshot. And I said, don't ever do that again. She said, what are you talking about? I said, you gave her a reaction. Don't give her your reaction to something. You let her have her own reaction to it. If whatever she did makes her happy, cool. If it makes her sad, cool. Whatever it is, then we'll flow from that. But I would appreciate it if you would not give her your reaction to something. And she was like, what the hell are you talking about? I said, just, if I'm going to stay the rest of the time we had thought about me staying, I need you to at least try to do that. Okay. Not job, daughter-in-law, no problem. So we go back out to thing. And a little bit later, maybe, 40 minutes later or something, Charlotte's doing something, similar kind of, totally different circumstances, but still in the same setting. And she's playing, and the mother-in-law had come back out and whatever. And so Charlotte goes to do something and bonks right her nose, right. She misjudged. She was watching a butterfly outside and hit I guess it's like the wood. It's a big screens with a wood thing. So she kind of hit the edge of the jamb on the thing. And this time it was much more noticeable because she turned and looked at her granny. And I had no reaction, nothing on my face. And the mother-in-law, for not really understanding or getting, was pretty good about being blank. And so then Charlotte looked at me and I went, and this took a nanosecond, and she turned right around. She was laughing, went, there was none of this thing, but you could already see that it was this learning thing. Like somehow not because she didn't get this at our house. This was incorporation, so that's just one example of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's an easy one to see. Actually, with children, I've witnessed that myself, but I didn't classify it just like you did. But that makes perfect sense, because when someone else will react, they're much quicker to, cry or whatever.
And that's even really, really subtle, because I noticed too, being a nanny my whole life, if mom and dad are nervous or reticent or doubtful about anything they're doing, then the child is going to pick up on that and resist. It happens every time.
Yeah. So you can that's a little bit of a story to illustrate an example. You
Right.
could also use it kind of as like a tool to notice things within your own life, whether if you have a child or other relationships, that you do it to yourself. If you're doing some, maybe you do a sport or something, and you notice when something that's a little bit challenging in the sport that you're doing, and you have trouble with that particular kind of hurdle or that particular kind of move or whatever it is. And if you can kind of separate it out, you'll notice that it's this particular thing. So if you can then come up to it and feel into it, what is it that you're projecting, scripting, right? So somewhere along the line, this example that I'm giving you occurred, right? You just use it for your metaphor of whatever sport or whatever it is. It occurred, and if you don't have to know the specifics of it, but if you just set the intention to reframe that and create your own thing from this moment, that's where you really get into the whole time is not linear, and you can, in this moment now, right, you could go back and change what was, which changes now and then, if that makes sense.
Well, it does to me. Because it's a part of that's a matter of perspective, correct or no? I mean, in thinking about changing, like what you were just saying there about changing now something from a linear back then.
Right. Yeah, because you reset it, because you are here and there, and it's only your linear brain is translating the information as now and then. But since you are multidimensional, now is then,
Yeah. You
and
heal your
now is
past
only
feelings.
now. And so as you
Right.
change now, you actually shift the then.
Yes.
So there's no precipitating event, we'll say, right,
Mm-hmm.
that moves that. And this is not a topic I want to go down at all, maybe ever, but certainly not right now. But just to say, that's why the whole psychiatry, the whole therapy, it's years and years and years and years, because the technique is to keep going back to those things, locking those things. And that's not the way they would call it, but that's what they're actually doing. You lock those things in that were then.
Yeah.
Instead of unwinding them now, which makes them disappear in essence.
Disappear, exactly.
Right.
Thank you.
But you see that,
And by
so
not
good.
allowing it to disappear, you are bringing it into the now and keeping it active and keeping it alive.
That's right.
Well, now, in all fairness, if it disappears, where's the repeat business model in that?
Yes.
Right.
And of course, because this is what to expect, what unfolds, what you enjoy, what you play with, what you experience, what you create when you're in this space is everything, is new structures, is new systems, is abundance, is, well, it could be whatever you want. So me labeling it is just narrowing it. But the point is that you can now understand, or at least get a glimpse of, why this is, one, such a big topic, two, such a fun, creative, holy cow topic, and three, why such a holy grail of shutting down, of programming to limit. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. It actually highlights hugely for me that whole, well, and having, as someone who has gone the psychiatry route in all sorts of shapes and forms and medications, yeah, I can definitely see where the work that I've done just in the last 3-4 years on my own, without the aid of the repeat business model and all the medications that kept me like a zombie, I'm in a much better space. Not only, I can see in this moment of now, with what you were saying about how that changes then as well. Without the expansion or being able to step back and see it from a larger vantage point, I don't know that I would have quite grokked all of that. How does that work? Without being able to get that I am a multidimensional being and that it is all happening now. That's still a little dizzying. Sometimes I know that this is a truth. I can feel that this is a truth, but it's still a little dizzying at times.
Mm-hmm.
We sort of touched on this last night in our conversation with Gina and Tim. I feel that this vessel is partly the focusing mechanism that my vessel is for my soul is what creates that linear thinking, or the propensity for that. It's so that this experience appears to be a linear experience. But I can
Well,
see
it is
what
a
you mean.
linear
now.
experience.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but I can see what you mean now about by changing things here in the now, because that's really all there is.
Right.
I had a hard, I don't know that I would have grokked that earlier, is all I'm saying. You know, before all of my time spent with the two of you.
Yeah. So, you know, there's so many it's hard. I'm trying to rein everything in because there's so many examples, or you could give, you know, I could highlight different things. Well, you can use it for everything and anything, but for examples. So I posted something, and I don't want to, we may want to do a conversation just on this thing I'm going to touch on just for a moment, but I don't want to do it right now. So I'll allude to it in a vague way. But I posted something, yesterday or the day before, documents, and there's and there's been quite a number.
That old chestnut.
There have been quite a number of comments on them, and I think right now we're leaning to the labeling and the judgment aspect of it. So this is for, you know, the what to expect. So if so, we'll just take that example for a moment. So what to expect if you go the way that you normally do, which is labeling and scripting and judging and ascribing something. And I'm not putting any lean one way or the other on each of those things. Just the act of doing it, right? So it's boxing it, right? It's categorizing it. It's slotting it. It's, you know, oh, well, this is this, which means this. So this is that. So I do this. So this is right? You know?
Yep.
So you could kind of have that. And when I say that, you might, if you've already looked at this, you might go, oh yeah, I see I did that, and I see I did this, and I see I did that. On this particular thing that I'm talking about, I put a comment at the top, which was a setup, which gave my feeling on it, which was done the way that it was done, as an invitation to what we're talking about right here, is to what you might expect if you look at this, if you flow through this without the labeling and the scripting and the judgment. Because as soon as that comes up, you just instead encounter what you're reading, what you're looking at, instead of ascribing, characterizing, right? And then you watch how the pieces go together and the flow that gets brought in. And if you can notice, instead of have observations about, you know, maybe it might be pull quotes or something like that, which I think one commenter, you know, pulled out. And that's very telling, you know, in that one, because what was pulled out and not pulled out that was surrounding it in that particular things that pulled out. So anyways, I'll leave that one at that, and we might have a whole conversation just on that particular thing. But
okay, well, that sounds good. Well,
but we do that all the time, and so we miss that stuff. So I'll give you another example along the similar lines. Well, who's going to take out the trash? Right? You know?
Yeah.
So, and one of those things, because there's labeling, there's scripting, there's judgment, there's characterizing. If everything changes and there's no one to take out the trash, right? Instead of encountering it and just noticing it. Here's an outcome you want to have happen, right? Or an outcome that has happened, and how do you shifting and changing it. And when one goes immediately to that programmed position, instead of the muscle built, whereas what you would expect when you don't do that, it changes, you could say, all the tools that are available for you to use lined out from you, all the materials, right? All of the, if you're talking about you got a construction site, right? You could sit there and go, the plumber didn't show up, this is gone, the guy, that guy's no good, he's a drug addict or a derelict or whatever. This one, ripped off the company. She could, well, these tools are all broken, or they don't work, or whatever it is. Or you could be in a job site and you say, well, you've got a backhoe and you've got, a big container with, it's all got every screw imaginable of every size, shape. It's got different tools. It's got, power packs. So if you're using cordless stuff, you've got walls and walls of the cordless things of every different thing it is. You've got skill saws and bandsaws and all this kind of stuff. So that's all set. And then you got the machinery and you got a whole different crews that specialize in different things. So you can then pick all these different things and say, well, what are we going to create? What are we going to build? We want to build, the outcome is X, and we've got all of these beings that are resources and tools and creators, right? We've got all of these infrastructure and materials. You see what I'm building? And you actually have two different things. And so the second picture that I painted is a little closer to what happens what you can expect when you're not labeling and judging, scripting, characterizing, right? As opposed to when you do.
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lisa.
Well, it just reminds me, I think somebody said it last night about expecting to change the problem with the same thinking that got you into the problem, And that's kind of that. If you aren't willing to let go of the way that we're looking at everything or labeling everything, how on earth can we expect to change anything? If we ourselves aren't willing to make that change, then our environment cannot.
Right.
Well, one of the things that came in for me while you were speaking there, BZ, is that, a lot of the folks that follow us, of course, have already seen those documents. And, but a lot of those folks also follow Q. And so, and I realized that what I'm about to say, but there's a lot of labeling and searching and all of that stuff that's going on. But there's also a lot of nothing is as it appears either. Yes. And so there has to be a whole lot of being open. Yes. And allowing flow of data to just wash over and seeing it's a bit like being a puzzle piece collector and not labeling all the puzzle pieces.
Right. Nothing is as it appears, and everything is hidden in plain sight. And, and so maybe we'll do that other show, but, and this goes for anything, who's going to take out the garbage or solving the problem with, a different way. So those, when you're thinking about, trying to build stuff, so the mechanisms for doing that, the blueprints for doing that, the, roll up your sleeves for doing that, is this ability. And you're not missing anything. It's like I'm not saying that you were in the wrong line and you didn't get this ability. You got it. It's there. Just
right. It is there. It's just it is there. We just have programmed each other out of it. To not be able to open ourselves up to see it or trust ourselves enough to even look.
Right.
Or to notice.
And because a couple just said it right now, but you don't understand. And that's a tip off of a propensity for not allowing yourself to see this magnificent tool that you've already got. Right there. That's a tip off that you're doing that.
Well, but you don't understand, especially in regards to this. So notice whatever it is that you don't understand about it. I mean, just notice yourself about that. Whatever it is that, I gotta go make the donuts. So notice things about that. Allow all of that to come in without labels and scripts and judgments, and see how you feel about that.
Yeah.
Because, all of that, it's the exact same thing. I mean, for me, there's no different answer, even with that. It's not a different answer.
Well, I'll give you a little example that just came in. So, I think probably when I was just when I had first started driving, so 17, 18, 19, maybe 20, right around there. I had a horse hauling company, Pony Express Horse Trailing. And I used to go around more of the East Coast and haul different people's horses for,
Has the snow done a number on?
No, but apparently someone doesn't want me to relay this example.
You just do so anyway.
Yeah. So anyways, that's what I used to do. And so obviously to do that, I had confidence in not only working with horses and loading horses of all shapes, sizes, and temperaments, and hauling them, in my rig, on the road, single young woman. And so great confidence in driving and ability and skill and all that. And I had that up to that, did that. And then, so that just as a scene set. And then maybe go, I don't know, maybe not quite 10 years down the road, I was doing something and I wasn't doing that anymore. And I had since gotten married and had a child. And I remember a couple different things. One was around driving, one was on something else. And I remember being annoyed and frustrated. And the time that it showed up really loud, I think it was kind of knocking on my shoulder and tapping me on the head and in a bunch of different places. But when it finally, I finally noticed that this was going on, the frustration and annoyance and all that is, I don't like being nervous or not so adventurous to drive or whatever. How did that, why am I like that anymore? Because I could remember on the other side of it, I could remember to what I talked about the horse falling and all that kind of stuff. But there was this time all of a sudden that it finally had knocked on my shoulder enough that apparently it was time for me to notice it and to do something about it, to choose. This was a choice point, was a node point.
Sure.
And I was like, yeah, why is that? Yeah, who's going to take out the trash, right? How do we build this new thing?
Right.
And so what I said about playing with, instead of being frustrated or trying to break through some fear or spend hours or therapy or whatever to try to figure out what it was, I went into the feeling of, because I could touch the feelings of what it was to have all of that confidence and to do the things and the joy and fun and how I could be of service to others and all that kind of stuff. And so what I'm saying is that I spent the time playing within this moment now and shifting what would have been in the middle part. Does that make sense? So beforehand was here, and then this part, something occurred. So I'm here now going, okay, this is annoying. And I can remember, hey, this is really cool. But there was something occurred. And so I didn't try to find this something. I just made the decision and the choice point and the intention and played with that to change it now. And the reason that I bring that up as an example is that we can all do that in our own ways of how we're now making the choice to build this muscle to notice and to let our creatorness flourish. Sans the labeling, and we do that, sans the labeling and the judging and categorizing and boxing, and so Lisa with her telepathy or whatever it is, it can be everything. It could be a very linear, a linear skill writing. Did you break your finger and you notice that you hold the pen differently or whatever, so there's lots of ways that we do. Now some things, it's interesting because some things when I gave the example of breaking your finger, I thought, yeah, I've done that. And I did change how I wrote, and then I changed it back because I noticed it seemed kind of funny. But it just took a moment. So something I've been doing for years and then shifted with an accident and then noticed, and in that split second changed, and it so some things we get hung up on and we got to work at, and some things so we won't even notice, except for right in this moment when you give an example, I go, oh yeah, I did do that. So you know what I'm saying? It didn't take any time to do it. I noticed it, boom, I changed it, and I let go of it. And some I had to work on.
You're calling to mind something that's been happening to me. So I've been getting really frustrated behind things like not going the way I'm a control freak. And I would have, I don't know, 2 months ago argued that I'm really not, and I've worked through a lot of all of that. So no, I'm a control freak. Except for it's everywhere. Me, trying to control everything. Anyway, what was I trying to control that I was going to tell you about?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. So yes. Well, what am I trying to control now?
I need a little visual of a light bulb going on here for Lisa. Ding!
I know, right? So I'm noticing that I've been getting really frustrated when something doesn't go the way I want it to. So maybe this is the scripting portion of what we're talking about. And instead of just letting it flow and observing what happens, right? I'm really busy trying to force it into this certain kind of way. And by just kind of doing that, just allowing, just noticing, let's just look at it. And so, kind of take a breath and just let the information wash over me. I'm noticing that I was really frustrated at some really funny stuff when I think about it now. Okay, so I'm learning how to translate, right, what's coming through me on paper. And apparently I'm early attached to how this whole thing goes down, apparently. And I would have told you that I don't. And yet, here it is. Okay, so the words will stop for no bad reason. And I cannot tell you how frustrated I was becoming behind this insult. I don't know. I guess I took it as, I don't know what I was doing. Anyway, I would get very offended, and sometimes I would give up and just walk away. Okay. And then other times, I would just work through it and just keep trying. Like I would just keep being so persistent. Like, you know, I'll just hammer at this. And what I noticed is that I was controlling the situation instead of flowing with the situation. And what was happening when I sat back and just sort of, you know, allowed things to be, and I just sort of sat with everything, all of a sudden I was shown through a series of events, like all the times where I've done this thing again and again and again and again and again. Oh, a pattern developed. And I noticed that when the words stopped flowing, within a few minutes, something in my physical environment needed my immediate attention, right? So one time it was a lady had come to the door, and another time my phone rang. It was my daughter from college. There are times where something needed my attention, and that would irritate me. That now this is intruding, and now this, you know, like I can't. And I sat here for hours on end. I promised I'd do it for 2. It's 10 4. Okay, I have 4 minutes. What gives? Okay. Now I see the beauty. Okay, first of all, the words paused because, oh, something's coming in. Something in my environment's changing. Hold on a second. And I'm being very dramatic about it, but this is how subtle all of this kind of communication is, and how I'm noticing, you know, my own stopping myself from even accessing and interacting with all of this information that's coming at me. I forgot what I was saying.
And when you, so a couple things. So when you go back, so the phone rings and you deal with that, and then when you go back, whatever that was, is there?
Yeah, the sentence picked up where it left off without a pause.
So
like
stop.
There was no.
Okay, so stop. That's really important. So that speaks to 2 things. Remember a while ago I said that you're in these moments, and they're just a short snippet of an energetic envelope where you are experiencing what happens when you don't judge, label, whatever. So you got your senses, and then you start judging and label. So you move from the noticing to the observation. Oh, I'm going to get it right this time. This is going to come this, right. And then the daughter, in this example, the daughter calls that moment to take you off that track. So you're preoccupied with the daughter noticing, which, remember I told you, you get fixated on something which lets all of this relax. Then you come back into this, and the sentence picked up, oh, look at that. She said, what did she say? She said right where it left off. This is what I'm talking about. And so everybody, I can absolutely guarantee you that everybody, if you play with this instead of snatching it and grabbing it, if you play with it, you will have, and your metaphor, your examples will be different than the specificity, particularly that Lisa gave with this, but it will, they will be, nonetheless, they will be exactly the same. Just insert whatever it was in your case. Does that make sense?
Yes, but I feel led to point out the absolute magic. I felt and saw 2 actual, well, because that's what we are. But first of all, the fact that the words stopped as something was approaching that needed attention, that's magic.
Right.
And totally not expected.
That was huge.
Right. And had you actually labeled it, like you said before, with the now what? Instead of seeing the magic that, oh, wait a minute, something was coming. And on some level, I knew it.
Her on levels I can't even comprehend. Like it was so smooth. If I work with it, right? If I don't label it, if I don't shove it into some box or some time frame or whatever the nonsense, I was doing there, but allow it to reveal itself to you. Oh, my attention needs to go somewhere. Okay, so it happened again on the swing. Like repetition is how I learned, apparently. And I was having another one of these experiences, where I was like, okay, wait a minute. This means something's going to happen, right? Because it happened again. And so I just kind of sat and I breathed and I was like, oh, I wonder what this could be, and nothing happened, right? And so I was just like, okay, it's all right. I mean, maybe I just need to sit. And then Sheila opened up her bedroom window and I could feel this huge burst of energy from her. And I was like, oh, Sheila has something she wants to share with me. And then so she shut the window and I was like, but let me finish this so I don't lose my spot, right? And so I started to write and a fly landed on my thumb. And the fly said, put the pen down. Remember, something happened. Remember? And I was like, oh yeah. And so I put the pen away and I came inside and a major development had happened while I was on the swing. And so, it was time. So later I looked up the fly because it was a fly that landed on my thumb. And I thought, well, I wonder what the fly message would be. And so I just, put in fly symbolism. I took a screenshot of it. So that's what I'm pulling up here. And I just found a random site that I felt compelled to look at. And I opened it up. And it said here, well, I'm just going to go to the second paragraph because really this was the thing that got me. It says, the fly is a sign that things around you are starting to change. And I was in the middle of a lesson of knowing how to read the subtle energies. So the lesson was about when the energy shifts, stop and notice it. Who is around? What just happened? Like, take note of the environment. And so anyway, so as I was in that space and the fly said, put the pen down, I feel like I was learning how it is that you go with the flow and how you can't have any plans. Plans and the flow don't go together as far as like I was planning on my writing or whatever. So you can't really, I guess the only thing I can plan is to stay in
And so there's a great example with what Sheila brought out to highlight of what you were talking about, Lisa, and then what you're talking about, of what to expect when you don't do those things of labeling and scripting and judging and character and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And how those answers, those inspirations, those light bulb moments, right? Those solutions. So you can call them different things because they can have feelings and morph into and materialize as, different things. And that's how we will build the new earth. That's how we will build the new systems and structures, and that's how we'll build the new mechanism to eliminate someone saying, well, who's going to take out the trash, right? Or the money system, or these different things. Does it have to be that it's going to take, 50, 100, thousands of years to do that? Well, it could. If the beings who are playing with this, who are figuring it out, and they're the ones who have either put themselves in charge of that because it was supposedly a faction or an organization, or some that somehow took power, whatever it was, has put this in place, or ascribed and put on that propensity to label people and force them into being small again, and that's the way they're holding it. But that is not what needs to happen. That's not that time, is not an actual raw building material in materializing the new things. Does that make sense?
Yes. Well, it feels to me that it's sort of imperative, really, that everyone figure out how to do this. If you're really interested in freeing oneself from what is commonly being called the matrix and the slavery system and all of these things, because this is the way I see that we do this. This is how these new and different, completely different structures are going to be built in the new earth, that everyone, the idea that it's just going to boop magically appear. It could be, but there's
because we make it magically appear.
Right, but there's still this unbinding and unwinding.
Yes.
That this openness and these sorts of things, they're required.
So let me just play with a list, because someone phrased a question and I didn't quite grab the languaging of the question, but I got the gist, so lists would be helpful. So aside from the things that are very obvious to me, and I think to the two of you, of the value of this, so we'll put that aside for a minute. So here's the list part. So in honing these muscles and playing with building those muscles, and then being this, doing this, flowing this, right?
Yeah.
You create specific solutions. You materialize specific events, structures, systems for your own personal self, for your own small community, whether it's you and your cat, or you and your family, or you and your neighborhood, or you, right? You put another, and I'm just going to play with kind of euphemisms now. You put another nail in the coffin. You pull out another stopper out of another bathtub out of the swamp, and more things drain, right? You kind of have the magic pen, or invisible ink, so you're turning invisible ink now visible. So the unmasking is happening on different pictures that haven't been noticed for 30 some odd years, and all of a sudden that one shows up, and then all of a sudden another one of another high level politician shows up that's also 30 years old. And so, I mean, as each individual being is doing these things, right, it is rearranging the board, so to say, of the energy, and it's making the invisible ink visible in a little piece here. We're doing this. So when the the phrases, the euphemisms, the colloquial, at least in the spiritual realm, terms of, well, we're all in this together, and it's an inside job, and everybody is part of this, and they're all actually meaning very specific, very tangible, very concrete, linear things for making all of this unwind and unbind and come to fruition and come into physical, tangible, experienceable reality. This is how, and we can't hire or put in place or just, slough it off to another government or another this or another that or another that, right? Because they'll take care of it, or I don't know, or I can't do it, or I'm just little, or whatever the, things is, because we're past all of that. Sorry, we're evolving past all of that. And this of sloughing it off, or which is what we're doing if we're not standing up and standing in to the truth of who we are, of taking 100% responsibility and accountability and liability for all of that.
Well, quite frankly, BZ, there's a lot of talk by a lot of folks. What they want is sovereignty. Well, this is part of that. Yeah. In my view, what you just said, accountability, responsibility, and liability equals sovereignty.
Yes.
And the unbinding and unwinding of these systems and all the way that the crap has been done is a where we go one, we go all. It is not some alliance that's coming in to save your ass,
right,
and boot these guys out. That is not how any of this works.
Right.
So get over yourself.
Or give you the memo in the Barcalounger. Yep. Nope.
Sorry, you want sovereignty? Stand up and take it.
Right.
Start figuring out exactly who you are.
Right.
And stand up and take it. And I'm not talking about going out and killing people and revolution and all that. No, it's sovereignty. It's you. It's me. This is exactly what all of this is. Sorry, I had to get passionate there for a minute because everybody wants sovereignty, but nobody wants to try to figure out how to get it for themselves.
Right. Well, it's always, someone else will figure out or tell us what to do. Well, that's not being sovereign. That's not being a creator being. That's not being in the evolutionary moment. And I'm sorry, but that's where each one is right this moment. That's what's happening. You can't, it won't get served to you on a memo, on a platter, on a news broadcast. It won't happen that way.
Well, it's not only that. Okay, so just in this moment of now, I saw something really huge too for myself. This is why the whole ascension process, embodiment process, and everything is a do it yourself, figure it out for yourself, and do it your own way thing as well. Yeah. Because if I hand it to you as to how to do it, where's your sovereignty in that?
Well, you've nullified. So it's an alchemical reaction, right? And so if you try to hand me something, or if you notice, I'm not handing anybody anything. I'm not selling anybody anything. Occasionally I'll give, and I give very little stories of my own. I mean, maybe sometimes I give a few, but they're only as an illustration for a particular thing, and only because they float by, and I tell me to give them for that little snippet, kind of like as a metaphor for something.
Right.
Because if you try to take something from somebody else, right, without like a recipe, you use a recipe, but when you meet that recipe, when you actually engage with that recipe, you've actually had an alchemical zing, and that recipe has now been made your recipe. It is unique to you. So you could look at it as that you have changed the molecular structure, or if you want to look at it as a recipe, like you look at there's a recipe on a sheet, okay? You take the recipe and all of a sudden magically the font changes to the font that you recognize, that you identify with, right? And the font size, right? And so we each put our own spin on it. If someone tries to give you, do it for you, or say that, take this and it'll do it for you, or whatever it is, it actually is like putting if this is an eyedropper, putting a dropper of a chemical and dematerializes or breaks the chain, the chemical bonding chain of that alchemical reaction, and makes the reaction, right, stop happening.
I was going to say, I don't see how it could ever actually start happening if it wasn't something that is initiated and sought after by the one trying to do the alchemical thing to begin with.
Well, you're absolutely
right.
right.
The same
I'm just trying to make it so that people can.
Right. No, I gotcha. But I mean, yeah, I feel you.
Like trying to force open the rose, or help that butterfly. That's not how.
Yeah, no, it doesn't work.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, breaking the butterfly out of its chrysalis,
See
because
how far that'll get.
Stuck and it's too hard. Well, now you've made it so the butterfly has no wings and no muscles in its wings, and so they don't work, so it can never fly, so it can never eat, so it just dies and withers right then and there because it has to do it itself.
Right. Well, that's why this is an inside job. And yes, it has been very confusing because there's all the I went to school and learned that way. Couldn't I learn this way? And because that was a method of enslavement.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's very interesting. Okay, so and what you just brought up there could be a whole other fascinating conversation based on on the several reels of video that just came in with that. So maybe I'll write that down. But you said, can't we go? Okay. So I touched on it for a minute. I just want to write this down. Can't we go to school to learn this like we went to the other school? Was that right, what you said?
Yeah, I said we learned stuff in school this way. Can't we go to school and learn this? I mean, that's what I was looking for. Yeah.
Okay. So let's do. I wrote it down. Let's do that because.
Okay.
But I do want to say that right here, and this gets in. This will, when we do that conversation, we'll get into the really coolness of the videos that just came in. We have been going to that school. We are enrolled in that school right now, and the school campus that we're enrolled in has different classes and classrooms and courses and pageants and curricula and stuff that are from the nursery school level all the way to beyond AP, just to use the old system courses, right? And we can go, and we do go in an AP class and a nursery school class at the same time, just on different things. And it's all customized for each of us. As soon as we walk in, to use this metaphor, walk in the building onto campus, drive through the gates, right? We customize all of it, replete with the instructors and the students that are with us and the campus staff and all the trees and the environment and all that kind of stuff.
It's just a completely different kind of school. And because what we've been programmed to think school is not the school you're speaking on.
That's
So,
correct.
I mean, I can follow what you're saying there.
Because
I
one
can
is a
follow what you're saying.
manipulation to shut you down and,
Right.
and track you and program you. And the other one is building your muscles and playing and yeah. So we
Well,
didn't really touch with all the playing of this. We just started on the idea of it.
Well, I mean,
it's huge
no,
and
we'll
it's
have
fun.
to talk some more.
Yeah, it's fun and it's fascinating and it's unlimited and we could start again, like as if we were to say, okay, take two and hit the button, do this again, and we would dive into it and cover a few things of the same, but it would because it is unlimited and because it's so fascinating and so rich and so complex and so diverse and so nuanced and so colorful. And what is particularly exciting, if there's only a few or maybe only one thing that is a takeaway, is that it truly is this building this muscle and then playing with it beyond that is the answer to the creation of the manifestation, materializing of there's lots of ways you could describe it, to everything, no matter what it is that you want to accomplish or you want to provide or you want to see or you want to play with or you want to experience or you want to solve or whatever it is, right? It does all of that for you individually, and then the you individually here and here and here and here, right? Okay, so all those millions and billions and gazillions and frontillions of those, right? And then you get two of those co-creating, or you get a triad because of the power in that co-creation, right? Now you've magnified and amplified and exponentially rarefied the unfurling of the creative capacity, untold amounts of magnifications worth, just in one triad.
Yeah.
And just in one triad.
Yes. Hey, she got it.
We got 9 going on right here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another conversation all on its own too, because there's some really interesting things with that.
Right.
Wow. So we're going to have to talk about this again because we didn't actually get to go with what you expect. Well, what'd you expect?
But I want to highlight one thing. So right here, right there is, again, Lisa stepped into that space of the non-judging, right? The non-labeling, non-scripting. Because when I said the triad here, right, I was actually describing what Lisa highlighted for everybody. Not if I was to point at the individual pictures triad, I was pointing at the individual triad.
Well, yeah, see, that's why I said this is another conversation, because Lisa and I have just recently had a conversation in regards to that, and we've done some noticing and some realizing of a few other things that have taken place for us here in North Carolina behind exactly what she said. You know, you know, it's what is that? Tesla said about if you want to understand the universe, understand 3, 6, and 9.
Yeah, there's power in numbers, all right. I'm just starting to grok that right now.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes. So again, that's a much larger conversation that I'd love to have too, and it's on my list. But yeah, but you're right, BZ. I know that there's at least a few folks out there that are like, what do you mean triad right here? But I mean, maybe they didn't see other videos, but that is what I feel like we're doing. That's the
Yes, we are the triad.
yes, each person. You know, you have your physical body, you have your soul, and you have the new that I feel I'm becoming. So,
Right.
you know,
yeah. So well, that's the 3, and then
mhm.
if you take 2 of us, that's the 6, and then you have the 3 of us, that's the 9.
That's right. So
And
we got
you
9 going
you
on
have
right now.
the Fibonacci code in all of its complexity and simplicity and creativity. Right there.
Yep. Absolutely. I am freezing right now. The energy is moving so quickly. Wow. Well, we will have to play with this again in regards to what to expect, but
And I would just like to ask you a quick question for you, Sheila. So, was this what you expected this conversation was going to be?
No, but honestly, I wasn't sure what to expect. And so I am beginning to just, because much like Lisa, you think Lisa is a control freak. Have we met? Yeah. So learning how to release some of that for myself, and to just having no expectations has been a tough one too, but getting the hang of that, because it feels like it's a whole lot more fun if you don't go into it with an expectation of what's going to happen, where you're going to go, what are you going to do, what are you going to say, what is it going to be, and just allowing all of that to unfold. It's been quite delicious, and a lot of really cool stuff that I would have never expected, even if I had tried. So,
or even have thought of to put into a plan for myself.
No, exactly correct.
Right.
Exactly correct.
And you picked this one.
Yes, I did. That's right, I did. I did pick this one. So, case in point, right? I mean,
well, thank you for doing such a fine job. I enjoyed this thoroughly.
happy to.
I didn't know how she was going to talk about that. It was really...
Well, we will definitely have to revisit this one again, because I actually have a few expectations about that conversation. And what I mean by that is that I feel the fantastical and the unlimited in regards to that particular portions of the conversation. So my expectations are that it will be fantastical and very much unlimited. And I'm your gal with the fantastical, because I love that. As a matter of fact, I know I could see now, BC, when I first met BC. That was the first words out of my mouth. I don't think I belong here. Because when you start talking about stuff like that, I jump right to the fantastical. But I gotta say, I think that's what we
That's
need.
a superpower. Thank you.
Who knew?
That's very jumping.
Okay, so would either one of you like to add anything further to this particular envelope? Well, we will have all the usual things in all the usual places, and I would love to hear from anyone and everyone who would like to contribute to this one in regards to what you are beginning to notice and what happens for you if you're not labeling, scripting, and expecting or, attaching things to things, judgments and whatnot. So yeah, share with what you're experiencing. I'd love to hear it, or any questions or comments for that matter either. So thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Until next time.
Much love.